I'm thrilled to present my interview with Susanna Puisto, costume designer extraordinaire. She has brought her style to commercials, editorial shoots, music videos, TV shows, and movies as diverse as Dumb and Dumber, When Harry Met Llyod, How I Met Your Mother, MacGruber, Eli Roth's Hostel, and so many more. She has dressed stars such as Michael Douglas, Brendan Fraser, Kristen Wiig, Ed Harris, Dana Delaney, Samuel L. Jackson, Colm Meany, Michael Rooker, Rebecca De Mornay, among others. But most exciting, she nailed the style for our favorite show. Come with me as Susanna shares everything from what it was like growing up in Finland to exclusive, never-before-heard details from behind-the-scenes costuming the first season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I guarantee this will knock your socks off. I am here with Susanna Puisto, who was the costume designer for Season 1 of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We never got to work together on Buffy, but we have become friends since then, and so I am so excited for you to be here today and for us to get to chat.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So let's go back to the very beginning. You were raised in Finland. What was that like?
You know, it was the 60s and 70s in Finland. It was pretty free. We just played outside. We didn't have video games. We had 2 TV stations. One was in Finnish, one was in Swedish, because we're a bilingual country. The programming started at 5 p.m. It was news. And then maybe there was like one movie or TV series and a movie. And we got TV shows from all over Europe, Australia, United States. Grew up with like Thunderbirds, Skippy, the Kangaroo, and of course, all the American shows. We grew up watching a lot of television, and of course, we learned English at school, but also because the movies and TV were not dubbed, they were subtitled.
Were you always interested in fashion and clothes?
Yes, I was. I loved fashion. Yeah, it was my thing. We were just kind of part of this gang of kids in Helsinki, the capital of Finland, where I lived. We dressed in vintage clothing. They had vintage stores in Finland that brought clothing from America, 1950s mostly. Levi's, Wrangler jeans, corduroys, all the shirts. And we just were really like into that whole kind of like a rock and roll, rockabilly 1960s James Dean type fashion. Mind you, they were not thrift shops. That stuff was expensive because it was imported and it was in condition too. But yeah, I always loved dressing up and it was always my thing. I've always enjoyed clothes and fashion and followed fashion.
And didn't your mother make clothes for you too?
Yes, my mother and my grandmother made all my clothes when I was in the 60s, when I was really little. Everything was homemade. They would buy beautiful fabrics like marimekko and make us little frocks, sometimes matching with my sister. We were close in age, but not twins. Yeah, everything was pretty much couture. We didn't have the same stuff as here, and retail stores were expensive. Then later in the 70s, we started buying more in department stores. We actually had an account at Stockmann's, which was kind of like Neiman Marcus, Finland, and we could go and get back to school clothes and whatever we needed. We had to look good. And we're from the city. We're from the capital, we were hipsters.
How did you end up making your way to the United States? How did that happen?
We started out, me and my father, in Spain in the late 70s. And then I did a brief stint in Monte Carlo. And then we ended up moving to the Bahamas, where we lived for 2 years. I went to New York because I was scouted as a model. Eileen Ford wanted me to be part of her roster of models. And she had everything planned for me, getting a place with a bunch of girls at United Nations Plaza. It was all done, but I was afraid. It was a big city, I was young and I missed my boyfriend. So I went to Paris to see him and that didn't work out. I thought, well, maybe I'll just move back to Finland. And I thought, well, what should I do? And I thought, well, I speak a little languages. So I applied at Thin Air because I like to travel. I remember I got an interview and the guy said, well, what languages do you speak? And I said, well, I speak English, I speak French, I speak Spanish, and I can get by with Italian and German. I can understand it. And he said, how is your Swedish? And I said, not so good. He goes, well, then you can't work for us because Finland is a bilingual country. So I was like, okay. So that didn't work out. So my dad had by then, he was living here in California, in San Francisco, actually. And he said, well, why don't you just come here? And I thought, all right. And I hopped on a plane with like one suitcase.
And that was it.
That was it. Yeah. But that's in San Francisco. That's where we lived.
You did end up modeling for Macy's and I. Magnin and Saks as well, right?
Yeah, I was with an agency called Sabina at first, and then later I was with Look Models. Yeah, I did a lot of like runway, believe it or not, but for like Macy's and Saks and Neiman Marcus, they would do like their collections or in-store modeling as well. I'm a petite, so I did mostly beauty, like cosmetics type. No, this was back in the 80s, and somebody like me making $100 an hour, that was a lot of money. I didn't have to work a lot of days in those days to make my rent and bills. So, and it taught me a lot, but I did mostly petite or junior modeling, and I knew my days were numbered. So because I worked with stylists, I thought, oh, that's an interesting job.
Right. That's where you got the idea, like, oh, this might be something.
I didn't even know such a job existed. I never knew. I mean, my ideas of working in movies was like, I wanted to be a James Bond girl. Like, that's what I wanted to be. I had no idea about costume design in those days. And so I started working with a stylist, top stylist in San Francisco, and we did all these campaigns like Levi Strauss and other stuff. And I learned, and I had a knack for it. At the same time, I was studying acting. So when I moved to Los Angeles, the idea was to come here and be an actress. So I signed with It Models, and I was going to auditions, but I could not get a job as a waitress because I didn't have any experience. And I needed to make money to support my acting career. And I got hired on a TV show.
Oh my gosh.
As an on-set costumer. It was called Shades of LA. And I'd never been an on-set costumer in my life. But I learned. I started getting booked. Everybody was hiring me left and right, and that was also assisting in commercials and music videos. And so for the next 3 years, it was like a crash course in costume. It's different forms because I had started in print, so I knew about that. Then I just became a costume designer. I guess it's just the planets aligned. I met some people and they thought they would give me a chance, and I did great. And then I started getting more and more work, and I thought, well, this is great because, as an actress with my accent, I would have probably been a waitress like 363 days a year, and then maybe acted like that one day, 5 lines or less, or like my auditions were like, get naked on page 1 and die on page 2.
Oh.
In those days, there weren't as many actresses with an accent. Now there are many, but not at the time. This was in, 1990. Anyway, I got to work in movies and television, which what I love doing. I get to work with incredibly talented actors. And to be honest, I don't think I was that good of an actress. I think I had the look, but I don't think I was that good.
You have a flair for the dramatic. I bet you were a good actress, but it seems like the planets aligned and you were meant to do what you ended up doing and what you have been doing. I know that you mentioned to me that Gore Verbinski was instrumental in making your career. And for our subscribers who the name it, they're going, wait, I know that name. Gore directed the first 3 Pirates of the Caribbean. He directed The Ring. He directed Rango and many other movies. Can you elaborate about that?
Yeah, he pretty much plucked me from obscurity. And I think the first job I worked with him, I'm not sure, may have been a music video or may have been a big Halls commercial. He had done the Budweiser frogs. So he was really known for things that had a lot of special effects. That was kind of his specialty. But I also did a lot of music videos. Bad Religion, a couple of those. Anyway, I worked with him beginning in end of 93 until I think the last time I worked with him was probably in 99. There was a group of us. We all worked together at Palomar Pictures. I learned so much from him. He was just so incredibly talented. He was so cool. Just like, he was a musician too. He had a band, It was just cool. He was very down to earth. We loved him. We were a family. It was a great education.
It's so great when you click with people and you really work and have a shorthand. One of my favorite parts of what I do is going to that first wardrobe fitting when I'm cast. Clothes inform so much about a character. It's a huge component of me getting into the skin of a role. I love collaborating and constructing the arc and the journey with the wardrobe and with hair and makeup. Is that expression of telling a story part of why you do what you do and why you love what you do?
That is the thing. People often tell me, why don't you do fashion? I am not a fashion designer. I did have a company briefly with my ex-husband, a fashion company in London, but that's not my thing. I'm not a fashion designer. I like characters. I like the beautiful and I like the ugly. I like the tacky and I like the chic. I love these worlds that we create. I love the collaboration with the director, the DP, and the production designer. I like working with my team. I love collaborating with the actors. I like being part of creating the world and telling the story and being part of this team. I think that's very important to me. I love being part of a team. And I love seeing something that's on page and then see it come alive, maybe become successful, have it influence the audiences. People are hungry for fashion. They love fashion. They are not dummies. There's a lot of competition, especially now it's even more. Everybody's trying to outdo each other with fashion, but we want to be there to entertain and to inspire. And it's fun and it's a fantasy. People were tuning in for fashion, and that people actually will just tune in to see what they're wearing. It's so fashion is not secondary. It's a very, very important part of the show. When you want to be on the forefront of fashion, you have to take chances. You might fail, but you have to take that risk because otherwise you're not going to be out of the box. When you want to create something new, it's a risk.
But isn't that with all art and every department? I think as an actor, it's the same thing. You have to stretch and take risks, and that's where something really exciting can happen.
I think so, yeah. And I think it's also being a little bit open. Like, I'm not so strict. I mean, I pretty much stick to the script of what I decide I like, but I do want to have some openness. I don't want to be so limiting, you know what I mean? If I decide something, I go there. I'm not wishy-washy ever. I think my style is more about believing in a vision and then spending my time fine-tuning it and making it perfect rather than going all over the place. Like, I don't do that. Like, I don't come with random racks in a fitting. I have outfits. Everything's together as an outfit. So it's a complete look. Actors come in, they can see I put a lot of thought to it. Yeah, we can change things, here and there once I see them in person, but more often than not, they like that. That's been my experience. But of course, with different actors, you do things a little bit differently. You modify it. Because I'm not forcing anybody to do anything they're not comfortable in. I am there to show something that they wouldn't maybe do themselves. And I had an actor once say, well, I don't know, it's not me. And I said,
is it your character?
It's your character. It's not you. You're playing a character. And he went like, oops. And it worked, and he looks great. But it was just funny. It's not me.
How did you get Buffy?
My friend was working with my agent, and she had known Joss Whedon when she was in high school. And the character of Buffy is based on her, and her two friends are all based, Willow and Cordelia are based on them. So it was the three friends. So when the series was coming, she thought I would be perfect for the job. And I was like a nobody. I had done one series and one feature, a couple of shorts, and I have assisted on, obviously a lot. So she got me a meeting. I read the script and I'm like, this is the best thing I've ever read. It was amazing. It was like a revelation. I felt like I understood her. I saw that world. I saw the potential. I knew it was going to be a huge hit. I felt with every pore in my body that this was something very, very special. And so I did a presentation. There was a lot of people in that meeting. There's a whole bunch of guys. This is a big deal, it's 20th Century Fox. Anyway, I did my presentation. It was really my performance, as I like to call it, was really more about the characters and how I felt who Buffy was. I was telling them I liked her so much because she was everything a woman can be. She was here to save the world in miniskirts and boots, like these boots are made for walking kind of thing. Because she never wore high heels. It was still a sensible heel. But she was also vulnerable. She was still a high school student. There was so much depth to her character. She was all these things. And she was witty. and clever, and I loved the dialogue. And every time I read the dialogue, it just sounded like my friend. I left the meeting, go to the parking lot to go to my car, call my agent. How did it go? And she said, great. They said, Buffy just walked in, cancel everybody. And that was it. I'm like, cool. That's what happened.
By the way, that was the same with me. Before I even got to my car in the parking lot, I'd had a meeting. I hadn't even read for it, and my agent called and said the same thing. So we had a similar experience with that, with Buffy.
I think it was very much about character casting, and that would include the costumes, you know what I mean? What I was doing was very different, from all the other TV shows at the time. I guess maybe if I had done a little TV, I would maybe more into that kind of like thing, like it's a well-oiled machine churning out some. But it wasn't. This was my big break. This was it. And I was going to create a new world. The world was wide open because it was a world that was fantasy. I didn't have to follow the rules. And I liked that. So they pretty much told me to I could dress her like I dressed myself. They liked the way I dressed. They liked my personal style. I had a lot of liberty. It was my world. I don't remember, nowadays they have all these approvals and, I don't remember those. I don't remember any approvals. I just would dress them and send them to set. It was funny. It was almost like you were doing an independent movie instead of a studio show. Where was all the red tape? Where were all the executives that were going to nitpick each t-shirt? And that is why it was beautiful, because when you give so much creative freedom, it's better. Because whenever you get all the executives coming in a room and start saying well, what about this t-shirt and that t-shirt? Then it kind of waters it down. It's just not so focused.
You know what it was, Susanna? The WB was a fledgling network, so it was the same for me. I would have normally had to go to network and had so many people vote. I mean, before I went to my car, when I had a meeting with just the creative team, they cast me. And I think it was such a blessed sort of creative, fluid experience because there was that freedom that isn't usually there when there is, as you're saying, so many people weighing in on every decision.
I didn't know at the time. I thought that's how it is. Like I said, I'd only done one pilot. I had done a pilot for Sony. I just don't remember interference. I don't remember that kind of keeping a tight leash. I believe that when you hire people, you should trust them to do their job. Or when you hold them in, then it just becomes boring. It's white bread. It becomes beige. And it's hard. Sometimes people give up. They're just you know what? I just want my paycheck. I want to go home. I don't have time for this. You got 20 people from the network and studio telling you every day because they all know better. And then it's just you know what? Okay, I'll just do that. I haven't done that, but I could see people do that.
I want to get in depth into the nitty-gritty of your brilliant work on Buffy. You established the whole universe. Before I do that, you brought something up that I want to ask you about. You said that Buffy, Willow, and Cordelia were based on real people. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. They were based on 3 girls who were friends in high school. One of them passed, and that's the girl who the character of Willow is based on. And I think that's why she's so close to Josh's heart. I think he wrote Buffy out of grief.
Oh.
So there's a lot more in the backstory of Buffy. I think that's another thing what gives it such power. And then Cordelia and Buffy are based on real people. I know them. They're my friends. Art imitates life.
And how did Joss meet them?
They attended a very exclusive school in Los Angeles, and he was there teaching. I think it was a course in some sort of creative filmmaking course. And he met these girls. They were his students, and he observed them. That's why it's so real, because he actually listened to real teenagers talk. Mind you, why it's so special is because those girls they were brilliant in a very artsy school. It wasn't just our regular school. These were highly, highly intelligent. The atmosphere was more heightened, artistic. I can hear their voices when they speak, the Buffy speak. It's a very specific way of speaking. I can hear my friend talking when I read the script. It's very specific. It's not just any girl talking like that. It's not. It's the phrases, it's the words. It's a very creative way of speaking. Somebody who is very clever, very quick. My friend is very quick. And when she has a comeback, it's not the word you would expect somebody to use. She'll use another one.
And you're very good friends with the inspiration for Buffy. You guys have remained very good friends.
Yes. Yeah.
And I've seen photos and also posts. And you're right, the way that she sounds, it is very much Buffy speak.
Yeah.
It's really uncanny.
Yeah, it really is. I can see why he would want to write about this. I didn't know the girl that Willow is based on because she asked, but I know the other two and the extraordinary woman.
And how did you become friends with them?
Well, I met one of them first. We worked together on a show. We became good friends. And then she ended up working with my agent. She's the one who got me the meeting for Buffy because she thought I would be perfect.
Is it true that your friend, who was the inspiration for Buffy, auditioned for the role of Buffy?
Yes, she did. But she's not an actress and she didn't get the part. Pretty sure she was relieved. Acting is not her thing. I think it was enough that she was the inspiration for the character. But for Sarah Michelle Gellar, because originally she was auditioning for the part of Cordelia and she got Buffy. The rest is history, you know? It all worked out perfectly how it's meant to be.
And your friend ended up working on the set.
Behind the scenes.
Did Sarah know that your friend was the inspiration?
She might have. She might have.
What has it been like for her to see her alter ego become a pop culture icon?
I think she's proud. She never really talks about it. I don't think it's been like the defining feature in her life. You know what I mean? Like she's got other stuff going on. There was this one thing. As a matter of fact, you know, she doesn't like volunteer it. She doesn't like come to the parties and guess what? I'm Buffy. It's, you know, no, she never did that. No. You know, to understand, she also comes from a background that's
Creative.
yeah, and Hollywood background. So it's not like actors is something new or foreign to her. You know what I mean? Like so.
No, but it still must be trippy, even for you, seeing the dramatized version of your friend so specifically.
But the funny thing is, I didn't ever think about it either. It was not even part of that, but like we thought about it so much. Like it was not, I mean, it was based on her, but then everybody kind of knows, but no, it's not like a big deal. That's the funny part. It goes like no big deal. You know, you know, Buffy is me, but no big deal. I got other stuff going on, but it's kind of funny almost, you know? Maybe that's why she's the real Buffy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the real girl, the real Buffy. She doesn't care that much about that. She just is.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's almost the best part about it. You know, I mean, I don't know if somebody wrote a part about me, I would probably be shouting from the rooftops. I would be so excited, you know? It never happened to me. Although they did sometimes write stuff into the scripts.
I was going to ask you that. Did you end up in the scripts of Buffy?
Yeah, I did. Not me, but things I said.
Beware being near a writer, right?
Yeah, because my costume supervisor, she would always be reading the new revisions, you know, and if she would get a new draft or new pages while I was out shopping, she would call me and give me kind of like, oh, this has changed, but you know, when I'm shopping, she would sometimes be like, oh, no, sis, they wrote, this is about you. You just said it yesterday, and here it's in the script. So she's the one who alerted me.
Look at this. Look, it's there.
Yeah, but I didn't know, and so they would. My crew would tell me. Like, oh, because I was busy. I was very, very busy.
That's an understatement.
I was just so hell-bent on creating this beautiful world, and it's all I cared about. I really didn't care about anything else. Like,
Well, we were working 17-hour days easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it was a lot.
Have you guys ever had any Buffy-esque adventures together?
We had a lot of adventures. We worked on other shows together. She worked in different capacities in different departments, but she also sometimes assisted me.
How fun.
Yeah, I mean, she's not really a costumer, but she can do anything.
Mhm. Well, you said she has a really strong visual sense.
Yeah, so we would, you know, like she worked on a lot of music videos with me. She did art department in some movies that we did. Her boyfriend was a production designer. She's kind of like a jack of all trades. She can do it.
Multi-talented.
Very, very talented. You know, quick study. So she can do anything. We had worked together before on some music videos, and one of them was Bad Religion. And so we had this idea that we could start a band.
Like one does, right? We'll just start a band.
We'll just start a band. So we told the guys we're going to open for them. And they go, yeah, you guys have a band? Like, yeah. And they're like, okay, cool. And nobody ever asked us really, like, can we sing or play the music? It was really funny because we don't. We just had these great ideas. So we had the T-shirts made and they said fidget and squeezy. Then we said, oh, what we're going to do, we're going to advertise our show. And then before even the ticket sales, we're going to just put sold out. So we would be like this fake band.
Oh my gosh.
Take all the merch and all this hype. And we could even tell people, we're going to be touring with Bad Religion. And the guys were all like, yeah, we can go on tour. No, they didn't ask if we know play instruments. We did
That's funny.
We're just being silly. So this kind of funny things we used to do.
The first episode establishes the world so clearly and distinctly, visually, tonally, in every single way. How did you establish this?
I fell on instinct. I just created this world that I loved so much, I believed in. What I did during my prep, I built closets. I even went to this show in Las Vegas called Magic, where they had all these new designers showing their stuff, and it made a lot of contacts with people. Like, this was stuff that's not in stores yet, for instance. But also, we were unknown show. Nobody knew us. I had to go into it. But I would go a lot to the showrooms and get stuff that wasn't going to be out for a while, because knowing that the show airs, a lot of things would already be out of fashion. So I didn't want to go to a department store, because then it's kind of like, oh, that's so, Macy's.
Last season or whatever.
I didn't want to do that. So in order to avoid that, I did get like these lesser known brands. And I did use a lot of vintage on her too. I don't know how I did with all the stunts, but we did. Even sometimes I would come to work and she would go like, oh, I like that. I would just take it off. I have to have her wear it. Like, it was so crazy. It was so like off the cuff and it was so organic. And I think that is how you get something beautiful. The leopard coat that she wears in that one episode, that was my coat.
Oh my gosh, really?
It was my personal.
Yeah. Is that in I, Robot You, Jane? I think it's in that episode, potentially.
That was my coat. It has its own story, but it's kind of morbid.
Oh.
The morbid story. But I thought it would be fine for a vampire movie,
Yeah, it's perfect for that. You mentioned that you had done some original sketches of the Master and that you wish you still had them. What were they like?
When I was thinking of the Master, I just was thinking what's really evil. And again, I wanted this to be like a rock and roll world, like the vampire, like rock and roll. That I was thinking, what would he be? And I thought, who's the most evil thing I would imagine? And I thought Hitler. He's evil.
And the jacket is very Nazi kind
That's
of.
what I did. And that Nazi jacket, it was actually made, again, by Henry Duarte, my trustee, because he worked leather so beautifully. It was actually made out of a pearlescent leather. So it had incredible, it was almost like mirror-like. So it had this kind of sheen. That's what it captured. And, those job bars and the boots. So he was definitely SS. Because I wasn't going to do Dracula. Sometimes you have to think like, okay, what kind of vampire am I going to do? There are so many. All kinds of people become vampires. I think those kind of Nazis, they're vampires. They're evil.
Real life vampires.
So that was definitely, I did the sketches. I'm not the best illustrator, but I have done them. I used to illustrations even and showed them to Gore Verbinski. I don't know. I come from a family of artists. My mother is an incredible illustrator, and my grandfather was a painter and art teacher, and both my sisters can draw very well. I'm the worst of us. But it gets the message through. And I did mine. I had all the swatches attached and everything, and I can't find them anymore. It makes me sad.
Tell me a little bit about your design for the look of Angel.
Well, Angel, I wanted him to be, again, like a rock and roll influence, but more European. I had also worked with a lot of European bands, like boy bands. So there was that. Or I was into like Yves Saint Laurent, like the velvet jackets. It's like this eternal cool, the French chic rock stars. And that's kind of what I wanted him to have as his element. I think I was, Alain Delon and I love all that. I really dressed him how I would dress a guy if I fancied him.
Ooh,
From the very phrase, like, what kind of guy would I want to shag? I thought, oh, you would wear this. That would be cool. Because I love that velvet jacket. I got it from Max Fields, and it was iridescent, black and green. It was not just black. It actually had that iridescence. So I thought it was just kind of like reptilian almost. And then I've always loved vintage leather jackets. I just think they're the coolest. Guy in a leather jacket just looks so cool. And I love the blazers. And he looked so good. And, he was pretty new. He was new to it. He had been a model. He was very easy to dress. And then Buffy had her look, which was a lot of vintage. I spent a lot of time at American Rag or Jet Rag. It was Wasteland.
Uh-huh.
Those mostly. most of her jackets, I would say, were vintage. You know, there are actually Instagram sites dedicated just like the jackets of Buffy.
Yes, I
Yeah.
actually do know that. And your whole look really has a feeling of the 1960s in season 1, a little bit Barbarella. She has such incredible clothes, and her whole look is just fantastic.
It was stuff I would buy myself, literally, if I was her. What would I wear if I was Buffy? And yes, you're right. It was very Barbarella. I love that look. That was a lot of my inspiration. The boots I got them at Barney's, New York. They were Costume Nacional. They were green. Yeah, the green is brownish green, but they're not like a brown. So that was her main boots. I should have gotten several pairs. I think we did have a couple of pairs because I think the stunt double had a pair too. And I shopped a lot at Barney's. I mean, I didn't even go to Saks and Neiman's that much. I was a Barney's girl. They have like really well curated collection. Like, I found Neiman's a little more matronly, and Saks was again like a little more old lady. Barney's was just like a fresher and newer and more exciting. And so was Maxfield's. And I went to Fred Siegel's. And we didn't have H&M and Forever 21 in those days. So, but there were a lot of little shops like along 3rd Street. I think Funk Essentials was
Oh,
one.
yes. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So they would always have like one-offs, you know. And a friend of mine owned a store on La Brea near American Drag. And my friend owned it. And he always had like really cool stuff, like from New York or London. And just like, you know, one-offs. Like it wasn't like there were racks and racks of the same stuff. And that's how I did it.
Well, because you also wanted Buffy's wardrobe to be special, and it really is special. So many people, including one of my co-hosts, Saya Rebecca, said when she was watching the show, she would emulate the way that Buffy dressed.
I love to hear that. I really wanted to create this iconic character. And I thought part of her was also, she wasn't a girl who she wasn't like a mall rat. But no, she was way more special. So
Yeah, she has more important things to do. She has to save the world, so she's not going to spin a bit of the ball.
She wasn't a girl at all. So I would see her, and I would see, you know, one of her talents was getting. So that's why we'd had all that. It was so much vintage on her. And then all the little T-shirts, they were like from like cute little companies, like the little pussycats. But those were all things that I wore myself. I literally would buy, like, would I wear that? I was always kind of like, I had to like it for me. Like I said, that's why it comes from the heart. Whereas Cordelia, she was much more ladylike. I mean, I always loved leopard, so they both had leopard. That's where they did collide. But Cordelia's was different. She would have like the pink leopard dress, and I did go to mall for her sometimes, but I think a lot of like Fred Siegel's kind of stuff.
I have a question for you. How much did you communicate with hair and makeup? Because they did the sort of Barbarella high ponytail and that kind of look with a lot of the outfits. Were you working in tandem?
You know, the funny thing is I wasn't. I was very busy. I was really huge show. I didn't have a huge team, and I was busy because, you know, I made it hard for myself. I didn't just go to a mall and grab everything at once. I was all over the place. So I didn't. I think they just saw the clothes. Maybe they went by the wardrobe trailer and looked at the racks and, you know,
And saw what it was, and then
you know what I mean? Like they knew the vibe. I wasn't changing the vibe. It was always kind of the same. Like, you know, she always wore the little short
yeah.
skirt.
No, it's completely has continuity. How about for you, the fact that she never wore the same outfit twice, that unless it was a continuity issue of that it was the same day or later that night, she had this enormous closet. Did that make it really fun, or was it also really hard because you had so many clothes to get?
When I prep, I think we started out at Fox. It is where Century Fox. So we could get everything free from there. So when we started prepping, I went there first and I pulled racks and racks of stuff. I create the world. So this is stuff for the background and for day players and for principals. So I pulled all that stuff. So there was a world. And then this way also my assistant, if they needed to go pull some, there was a template. It was very strict. You know what I mean? Like this is what we make and this is what we wear. But again, I was still struggling with letting other people as kind of a control freak, I guess you would call me. Yeah. Because it has just have like sometimes somebody would go get something and it's like, yeah, I know you tried, but it's not me. It's not exactly me. You kind of like missed it just a little bit. You know, I mean, that's been hard for me, kind of like I learned it over the decades, but hard.
What about Willow's look? What were you thinking about for Willow?
Well, her look, I started out like the Prada girl. There was that really good, cute little Prada going on. It was very 70s. It was 1970s. with the browns and all. It was like, it's the first 2 episodes you can see. She had a really cute, specific, it was very proud of a Mew Mew look from that year, that season. But then Josh made me change it.
They wanted her more bookish and nerdy kind of character. Was they wanted to change it in that?
And all those like kind of, I don't even know what you call those sweaters. They were like weird, like fluffy, veloury kind of sweaters.
Obviously, you didn't love them.
I didn't. No. Personally, no. I didn't love it. I tried to make the best of it. I think he kind of wanted a little frumpier or something. I don't know what he wanted. I don't know why he didn't like my Prada look. I love the Prada look. I thought it was so cool. So you can see the first 2 episodes. Then there was like all of a sudden it goes like, and that's because I was told to. So that was one thing he did change. So I think Willow had a special spot for him in that sense. That was the one that passed. I respect that. And I respect my creators and my writers. It's not like I'm just not I'm a collaborator, like I said. But just because I collaborate doesn't always mean that I love it. When you make a compromise, that doesn't always mean that you make the best of it. And we had this thing too at the time where I would go and shop and we had a driver. So I would just get the stuff, leave it at studio, and the driver with a van would come and grab all the racks and follow. And this was the other thing. We didn't do fittings with Buffy as much because my assistant, Jennifer Wyszynski, was the same size. So Jennifer would try a lot of the clothes for Sarah. But we also knew her sizes pretty well because when you're number one on a call sheet and you're very busy, you don't want to go all the time and spend hours in fittings.
How did you define and delineate the day crowd from the night crowd, the vampires? Did you work with color with that as well?
My school kids, the students, I created a new world. They look nothing like the real students at the school where we were shooting. In fact, one of the producers told me like, none of the students look like this,
And you said, thank you. That's what I'm going for. Something different.
I said, well, they don't have vampires in this high school either, do they? I did say that. Because they were all wearing like these ugly baggy jeans and look like, all looking like really grim and boring. Like they were like clones of each other. It was like there was no really distinction. It was very baggy. I hated baggy. I hate baggy. All this time you spend like taking care of your body and then you put on baggy clothes. So, like, why? So I believe I changed television in a way coming from music videos where I was dressing all these skinny rock stars. And this was before guys had skinny clothes, kind of. It was just the beginning of So I would put guys in the women's t-shirts to create that look of the Rolling Stones. You know what I mean? Like they all had white clothes. So I did that.
That androgynous kind of, that's incredible.
We did that, and as a matter of fact, we would dress these extras like that. And then first, and then we had a lot of plaid pants. It was very like rock and roll, 70s, 60s. We had a lot of vintage for them too. It was mostly vintage because I couldn't afford to buy their clothes. So it was mostly from the stock at Fox. And it was from the vintage section. Because what was I going to put them in 1980s clothes? I don't think so. So it was 60s and 70s. We did have like stuff like those shirts, everybody was those polyester shirts at the time. But yeah, so that was a lot more colorful. And then the night people, so that was much dark. It was very rock and roll, not really punk rock, but I think it was more rock and roll, darker, more leather. And it was not grunge. We didn't do grunge. We didn't do baggy clothes. We didn't do grunge. We did rock and roll, pure and simple. I guess I would say Rolling Stones of it, Oasis did later on. That was kind of, I would say, it was more the European cool bands. And it's not the funny thing because you could literally see when we were in the real high school in Torrance and see our kids and then the real kids. But one thing I wanted to say about the background, they got so into it. So they started shopping like that and dressing themselves like that and showing up. And I went as far as teaching the swagger. So exercise, you put a cute outfit and then they're still like, eh. So I would tell them, you gotta be like this. Sexy. I always use sexy. Everybody has to be sexy. My boat is always sexy. I say, you can't walk like that. That is like dorky. And they loved it because I was just like, I think they felt I cared. You can't do that. I mean, what a waste of a costume. Now you look at all schlumpy.
Right. You gotta carry it.
Pull it off. I say, how are you gonna get the ladies? The cool chicks. The Silver Lake hipsters, how are you going to get those? You're not. So it was funny because they grew with us, It was like, we'd see it in real life. Them showing up like, hey, look, I'm at shopping. Look, what do you think?
Right. Trying to impress you.
Like it was already happening as we were shooting.
Uh-huh.
The process was taking place in front of our eyes.
Must have been so exciting. was. To be continued.
Re-Vamped Ease, please correspond with me on Twitter at Juliet Landau or on Instagram at Juliet_Landau and on the Fans of Juliet Landau Facebook group or Juliet Landau official Facebook page.
You can also join up with all our Re-Vamped on Patreon. There are all kinds of tiers and really exciting stuff. Our Patreon peeps to be read in the credits: Dave Hall, Timothy Kendall, Danielle Harbour, Louise Brennan, and Brandon Key. It makes all the difference because we cannot keep making the show without you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we will see you next week when we do it again. Until next time, rewatch, revamp, reinvent, and be remarkable you.